Hello, I'm Dapper Dan Gavoston, and I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, including the annuals, which definitely count.
And I'm mischievous Mark Ginocchio, and I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, but the annuals do not count.
Well, welcome everybody to the Amazing Spider Talk, the show where two fans and collectors uncover the strange, fun, and fascinating history of the Spider-Man horror comic universe. Thanks for joining us for this review episode of the Amazing Spider Talk.
If you want to swing along with us on our journey through Spidey's past, present, and future, subscribe to Amazing Spider Talk on your favorite podcast app. Every other week, we put out a mainline episode of our flagship show, and sprinkled in between, we review new comics as well as interview some of the greatest Spider-Man creators of yesterday and today. So this is the perfect time to start listening. Today on the show, Dan and I are going to be discussing Strange Tales number 82 by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. Oh, I'm kidding. It just felt like that. Or maybe the Dickos. Who did Dicko do Strange Tales, or was that Kirby? I'm trying to remember my monster books from yesteryear, Dan.
I'm pretty sure that's Kirby.
Okay, anyway, what we're actually going to be discussing is Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, number 82, entitled Beyond Chapter 8. This issue was written by Saladin Ahmed, with art by Jorge Fornes, colors by Dan Brown, with a cover by Arthur Adams and Alejandro Sanchez Rodriguez. Letters, of course, are by VC's Joe Caramagna, and this issue was first released on December 22nd, 2021, which means we're getting ever so closer to catching up, Dan. But before we do that, why don't we talk a little bit about what happened in this very interesting comic?
Have we had an issue of Amazing Spider-Man other than like Amazing Spider-Man 700 released this close to Christmas before?
I don't recall, although we're going to have two that we're going to be talking about in the next couple hours, Dan. But no, yeah, it's been a minute. Usually the Marvel tends to lay low the week of Christmas and the week of New Year's, like the rest of the world, but not for Beyond. We gotta make this count.
Yeah, all right, so let's get into my summary of Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, number 82, and what a summary it's going to be. Now that he's awake, Peter Parker is relocated to a new hospital room and greeted by a series of roommates who one by one go missing, as the strange orderly that's overseeing them lies about their whereabouts, citing quote-unquote special circumstances. Mary Jane promises Peter that she's going to look into it. However, the orderly comes for Peter, calling him nosy. He increases Peter's medication and takes Peter to the elevator, deeper into the hospital to a quote-unquote special place. That turns out to be a decommissioned operating room where the orderly reveals himself as a carnivorous monster that's been feeding on the patients of the hospital in the dark. MJ suddenly appears and uses the light from her cell phone to burn the monster. The two fight, but MJ is able to turn the lights on and incinerate the monster as Peter passes out. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the Manhattan sewers, the team of Colleen Wing and Misty Knight, our favorite two heroines, are on a mission from Maxine Danger. They find their target, the Lizard, who, I guess, is back to his animalistic form. I mean, who can really keep up with this guy's status quo at any moment? It's the Lizard. He's doing something new. Okay. Sigh. And that is Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, number 82. Mark, before we really get into this, I thought we should talk about Amazing Spider-Man number 80.BEY, which was like $4.99, really hefty, big page issue. And some people might have picked this up, not picking up that issue and gone, wait a minute, Peter is like awake and doing okay? What happened?
Yes.
Well, it turns out the .BEY issues, despite the previous one not really counting, this past one was really substantial in that it showed Aunt May and Dr. Octopus basically reviving Peter. So, Mark, let's give some quick thoughts on that issue before we get into this one.
Yeah, I mean, very quickly, I mean, like, I actually liked this issue a lot, and I, you kind of prepared me, because I think before I read it said something to the tune of, Oh man, there's something that happens at the end of this one that really should have gone in the main book, and I kind of said to myself, "Oh, I bet you Peter is revived," and lo and behold, I was correct. But like, you know what? I agree that that was not. I don't think this was the right placement to do something like that. But also, a well executed story is well executed, and I liked the dynamic of May and Otto here, and Otto kind of walking that line of trying to help, but still being Otto and screwing things up in his own unique way.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the depiction of Otto was a little silly, but it could just be that like this is a very much changed Otto Octavius, so I'm like trying to adjust from like my years of Superior and the richness that was brought to that character that has suddenly been regressed back to his like pre-Superior form. So like I find this version of him a little bit silly at this point. But I thought it was a really fun story. I mean, do I see Aunt May as kind of getting herself involved in a caper like this? Not really, but like it was fun, and you know, a good fun story outweighs any of my like major complaints overall. And you know, it's kind of fun to see these two of all people finding a way to revive Peter in all of this. I don't think it's terribly thematically on point with Beyond and all of that stuff and all the ideas that they've been going into there, but like as a kind of like side adventure, I thought this was fun, and honestly, like you said, more worthy of the Amazing Spider-Man singular numbering than issue 82 was, which we'll get into in a moment.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add that, I mean, this might have clicked more for me, and we've talked about this before on this show. Like, everything from the Bagley cover down to just the general tone of the interior kind of reminded me of like mid 90s Otto from the Clone Saga era, which fits, being that we're kind of in a Clone Saga of sorts with Ben being the main character of the book. And I kind of have a soft spot for that version of Otto. I mean, where he was still kind of a jerk, but like not a complete, you know, sociopath. I mean, you know, he was kind of like, you know, rocking that anti-hero tweener line a bit, not totally, but close. And it just, you know, like if this is the Otto we're gonna get now in the post Superior universe, I don't mind. I kind of, you know, was hoping we wouldn't necessarily get a return to like that, like, you know, Ramita Lee era of Otto, or is this everything? He's just trying to blow everything up all the time. I don't know. I you know, that gets tiresome too. So it worked for me. Yeah, I agree. Is it totally realistic? No, but I think if anyone is going to kind of pull Peter out of the mess he's in, I do kind of like the irony of a May Otto team up being what gets him out. I think that I don't know. It's just good. There's some good storytelling there, and I felt that for the most part they pulled this issue off pretty well.
Yeah, and we're getting a return to the Otto storyline in issue 84, so it doesn't feel like it's just something that existed in a pocket universe. You know, despite right. Peter waking up, the Otto thing will still have ramifications, and he seems to be coming like a major player in the Beyond saga. So, like in that regard, I appreciate the kind of through line that is established by this issue. So, you know, if you haven't read 80.BEY, I recommend you go out to your comic shop and see if you can pick it up, because it's a substantial chapter in this Beyond storyline, even though it wasn't given a substantial chapter title. Yeah, anyway, yeah, I thought it was good. I'm not going to give it a rating because we are reserving that for our main titles. But so let's talk about issue 82, which I think, on the other hand, I think I put in my notes here, this is just a bad issue of Amazing Spider-Man. And I don't think this is offensive in the way that we've like given some of our F books that we've rated over the years. But it's like, oh boy, it was a signal alarm for me of, oh my gosh, the Beyond storyline is really losing its thread.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, this is, you know, we talked about it last episode. I think the chinks in the armor have been showing now for a couple of issues, and this was kind of, you know, we've gone from chinks to having a hole blown through the armor here. Like this is very concerning about where this creative team ultimately wants to go here, because like, you know, we went from well, we're repetitive, and it doesn't feel like we're cohesively pulling the story forward to like what is the purpose of this story? Like, what are we trying to accomplish here? Like this really, there's one thing when there's a one and done, but you still kind of feel like it advances something. But this is just like this reads like a backup in an annual that doesn't really have a connection to anything either. Like, this is just like totally random. Like, I mean, this could have been an alt universe story for all I knew. Like, it just felt so out of left field.
Yeah, and it comes down to a number of things. Like, I was excited to get Fornes' art on this book because I've really liked his art in other stuff. And for the first half of this book, I was really digging it, this kind of more subdued, like kind of horror themed, art in this book, and I think his art is pretty solid throughout. But it's just so random that the issue where we bring Peter back finally, we completely changed genre for Spider-Man into a horror book. And that is purely editorial that allowed that to happen. Like that this is how they chose to mark Peter's return. And it's not even that it's like just a horror book. It's a really poorly written horror book. Like, it's so random that there will be an orderly killing people off in this hospital. There's been no foreshadowing of this. But then the resolution to it is as absolutely pat, or as much of a shrug as you could get in a book like this. This is just like, this is not to attack Ahmed, but like, this is not a one and done story. Like, this is like half of a story that we're getting here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really don't know what else to add to the general thoughts beyond that. I mean, like, yeah, this is like it suddenly reads like a very random Stan Lee authored horror book from the early '60s. Hence my Strange Tales joke earlier on in this episode. And yeah, it just felt so random. Like you said, no foreshadowing, no real connection, and like. Not to jump ahead, but then, frankly, when you get to the next issue and how Peter's recovery is treated, you're kind of like, why couldn't we have just gotten that as Peter's first issue back? You know what I mean? Because this just feels, similar to what we said last episode, like a wasted opportunity of a kind of seminal moment for this character here, kind of warping it into this weird horror book with this random character who we know nothing about, and having him kind of get bailed out by his girlfriend. I don't know. It just seemed weird to me.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, I like MJ as a character, and I like that her relationship to Spider-Man is what it is at this point in time. But, like, I don't think this really has anything unique to say about that in any way. And really, like, I mean, I don't know what to say to an editorial team that makes this the primary issue, but the 80.BEY a .BEY issue. Like if there was ever a use of the .BEY or the .1, it should be for experiments like this, where you do something completely thematically different than the rest of the book, where you do something tonally different. Like this is the the essence of inessential Spider-Man stories right here. Like, it has nothing to do with the story that we've been getting. And honestly, I thought that the cover told a better story in line with Spider-Man than the interior of this book did. I mean, it's a brilliant cover. And like, it got me so hyped for this issue to see, like, this panel's being used on the cover, tell this story. Like, yeah, cool. Like, what does Peter do in a hospital bed if like a criminal breaks in and he still feels responsible? I buy that. But a like cannibalistic monster that lives in the basement of the hospital? What?
Yeah. And let's also add, I mean, we've known from the beginning with Beyond that it was a finite number of chapters. We knew when this is going to end. So the fact that this was kind of programmed into that, I mean, what does that tell you? I mean, like they're programming padding into this, like this wasn't like, oh, we now have decided to extend this arc another 3 months, because we haven't. I mean, we've known from the beginning how long this was going to be, and this, so like, if you're scripting padding into a storyline, then that does not give me a lot of promise for how this broader storyline is going to end.
Yeah, right. Well, they said in issue 1 that they had increased it to 19 issues because there was just 19 stories worth of content they had to tell. And I think that myth has really been dismissed over the past few issues. This feels like we're just getting padding as we tread water between the offerings from Wells and Gleason. Like those are going to be the stuff with the actual content in it, it seems like.
That, and that they knew that they needed to make it to March before they could get a full-time creative team on here, and so they just had to do it. That's all, which is just disappointing. I don't know. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, look, we don't know the deal, behind Nick Spencer's, sudden departure. So like that might just be the situation that they found themselves in. But then again, they just released 4 books in December, and I don't think we needed that. So like take a time out if you need to. And maybe they can't. Maybe there are financial reasons they need to put this book out to keep everybody with their jobs, and I appreciate that, but like at least then consider making this a BEY, and I know that we're like belaboring the labeling of this, maybe a little bit too much, but it just seems like kind of just weird decisions being made left and right.
Yep. One thing that I thought weird on this was the pairing of Jorge Fornes on this book. What'd you think about the art that he did on this? Dan?
I mean, I really like his artwork, and Dan Brown, the colorist, that limited color palette. Like, if Spider-Man was a horror book, or they had in some way built up to that, this would have been the perfect pairing. It is like I love the kind of intimate, very constructed paneling of this issue that builds in that creepy horror dread. Like, I don't love the monster design when we do get into the basement, but like all of the kind of like Peter in bed stuff and the different colors, the blue and reds that alternate in his like kind of different heightened states of fear, that stuff all really worked for me. And, I can't knock the artist because he delivered exactly what he was asked to do.
Definitely. I mean, like, again, this is not a gothic horror book, but I feel like Fornes hit the tone right visually. So, I mean, great job on a book that shouldn't have been this way. I don't know. I don't know how you reconcile that, but it was interesting to see this art, but not necessarily interesting to see this story. Does that sound fair, Dan?
That's absolutely fair. Although in the Slack, there are a lot of people that are defending this book. And look, if you feel differently than we do, great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. This was just not one for me. No. Yeah, but Mark, why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about the Slack?
Yeah, I mean, if you're someone who identifies with people who are positive about the story, you can join the hundreds of listeners like you that hang out in our community of Spider-Man fans on the Slack. The Amazing Spider Slack community is absolutely free to join, and you can jump into active conversations with awesome people about collecting, conventions, movies, new comics, old comics, and more.
Yeah, I hang out in there every day. Like I said, we've been talking about this issue, but one of the other things we've been talking about, and it's really hard not to, is we've been discussing Daredevil comics, because I feel like in the heart of every good Spider-Man fan is a Daredevil fan. These characters just fit so well together, and we've got Devil's Reign going on right now, which is really excellent, and that Zdarsky Daredevil run is so good. We've been talking about our favorite Daredevil comics. So, Mark, we don't just talk about Spider-Man comics in there.
You are multifaceted in that.
Yeah. I think people are asking us to create a Daredevil podcast. And as much as I would love to do that, if I had a separate version of myself that could handle that workload, I think you and I both share a love of Daredevil. So if you want to join our awesome Spider-Man and sometimes Daredevil community, just follow the link in the description and be sure to say hi. And once you're there, let us know what you thought of this new episode and this comic. Maybe you feel similarly or different to us. So let's get back to our review of this issue, Mark. Let's talk about MJ a little bit.
Yeah, I know we touched upon this a few minutes ago, Dan, but I just felt it was kind of worth coming back on its own little bullet point here, which was just her depiction in this and kind of like her assertiveness and heroism here. And look, like I love MJ, and I love that like for a while now she has been depicted as someone who is not a damsel in distress. That's not what I'm suggesting. This is not where this is going. I'm not saying why is she, but like I don't know, like it this felt like a very hollow treatment of the return of Peter here, that like he immediately found himself in a predicament and it took MJ kind of randomly saving the day here. You know what I mean? Like, like it's not like she was, she outsmarted the monster where he was kind of, he was the damsel in distress, basically. You know what I mean? And it just, I don't know, like to me, like, and not to jump ahead, but especially versus what we got literally one comic later with the Gleason issue, it just, to me, like reading these kind of in concert with each other, I was like, I don't know, like this just felt like a real poor use of anything. And as you even said a few minutes ago, like it's not like it really moved MJ's character ahead differently or changed her relationship to Peter. It was just a moment that they just threw in there because it was a because moment.
Yeah, I mean, it works for me that, we've seen her step into this role of hero time and time again. I love the artwork that Fornes did with her. She looks like a Romita era MJ, and I love seeing that. But yeah, it's not even that like I want her relationship to change with Peter, but it's like, let's see the unique wrinkles that like this situation can bring forth, which is to say, like, how does she feel about stepping into the hero role or being Peter's caretaker? There might be something interesting to explore there, but instead we just kind of got monster of the week and her turning on a light switch to save him. It just, there's nothing I could take away from this and go, remember when that story decided to like look into this aspect of the character? There's just nothing really that interesting going on here.
Yeah. And speaking of not interesting, what do you think about Colleen Wing, Misty Knight, and the Lizard in this issue?
I mean, I just do not care about these characters, especially after that BEY issue that didn't do anything with them. And like pairing them with a character as mishandled as the Lizard doesn't really get me all that encouraged either. I mean, like, what is up with the Lizard? He's just an animalistic character again. I thought last we saw him, he was like doing fine as the Lizard with Dr. Connor's brain. Now he's in the sewers again. Like, I cannot chart. The one thing about the Lizard is he's consistently inconsistent.
Yes, I think that's fair. Yeah.
I mean, is he still made out of brain material? No, he's not. Definitely
No.
not. So like, this does not get me excited in any way. And like, this is where maybe they like, oh, wait a minute. Kurt got split with the Lizard, didn't he? So this is the animal. What am I talking about? Like, but again, this is the Lizard for you. Like, I can't even keep up with it.
You have to get a Hickman chart together to figure out where he's at right now. Oh my God.
Yeah. Okay. So whatever. I'm still not interested, but it is what it is.
So Dan, this is shaping up to be one of our shorter reviews of the Beyond era. Does shorter mean better for the comic? What's your grade?
No, this is a D-. I think I could give this an F, but like I think I would feel it's forgettable more than it is offensive. So this is a D- for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think ever since we kind of crossed the threshold into F the last go around, like we really want to save those bullets. So I'm with you, D- here.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. Well, as lacking in entertainment and value, we found this issue. If you find our show entertaining and valuable, please consider supporting us, recommending Amazing Spider Talk to a friend, and if you're able, become a member on our Patreon.
We can only bring you this content with the support of our Patreon members, and we owe the show's success to every single one of them. And we are constantly making exclusive content for our members.
Yeah, why not take $3.99, the price of a new comic, and put it towards a month subscription to support our show and start receiving our Patreon content. That way you'll hear our Patreon exclusive review podcasts like this one on every new issue of Amazing Spider-Man the same week they come out, instead of waiting for them to arrive in our public podcast feed.
And if you contribute $10 a month, you gain access to exclusive artwork from famous Spider-Man artists commissioned exclusively for our members. This season, we'll be mailing out a print by artist Ron Frenz. He's created a lost page of The Kid Who Collects Spider-Man for us, which was inked by Brett Breeding, depicting Tim and Spidey sharing laughs over Tim's Spider-Man comic collection. Plus, every episode we release a new episode-specific desktop background created for us by artist Nick Cagnetti for our patrons to enjoy.
And I hope our patrons have been enjoying those. I've really been loving his Hobgoblin artwork that he did for our Hobgoblin trilogy. I think he had fun drawing the Hobgoblin. I mean, who wouldn't? But those have been extra special and very, very nerdy. So that's been a lot of fun. But you know, we know that the New Year's is a hard time for everybody, as it is for us too, setting new resolutions. But maybe one of your resolutions will be to help out our show if you love our show. You know, just listening and sharing is a great first step. But if you do have the means, please join our Patreon to support our continued existence so we can keep doing shows like this one. Just follow the link in the description. And again, thank you to all the members who already make these shows possible.
But it's that time for all good things to come to an end. So we want to say thank you to you, the listeners and viewers, for tuning in to this episode of The Amazing Spider Talk.
Yeah, as always, this episode was edited by Rick Coast. Our artwork comes handcrafted by artists Ron Friend, Sal Buscema, and Ray Sumser. Our theme songs were produced by Rylan Bojack, Tony Thaxton, and Spider Madge. So Mark, until our podcast host company turns out to be run by a cannibalistic monster that is killed by exposing it to any light, what's our motto?
Our motto, of course, is, with great podcasts, there must also come the amazing Spider Talk.
Two men who know the angles, uncover and untangle all the questions and the webs left out to tangle. In 1962, last Wednesday's afternoon, they'll bend your ears with reckless self-abandon. The amazing Spider Talk, the amazing Spider